This may be the most jam-packed orchid medley chit-chat video I have ever made. I even had to write down some notes. All of this and more coming up at the Orchid Hut. Welcome back to the Orchid Hut. My name is Dana, and thank you for joining me today in another Orchid Medley chit-chat video where I bring you a variety of orchids from my collection, and you never quite know what I might bring. And today, as I was collecting different orchids to show you and talk about, I nearly overwhelmed myself with bringing things in and trying to figure out what I was going to need to just film outside because I just really couldn't even bring it all in. So we're going to start today with an update on all of the Catasetum orchids. Then we're going to move into discussing the orchids that are spiking now in September and the beginning of October, as well as those that are in full bloom. And then we're going to close with a little bit of an update and just some additional thoughts on preparing an indoor growing space if you are a grower who, like me, has to bring all of your orchids in for the winter. So we're going to start with all of the Catasetums, and I'm going to insert a clip here that I took from their outdoor growing shelf area. And what's happening with all of them right now is that you can definitely tell the vegetative growth cycle is over. The leaves are beginning to lose some of their green color. They're beginning to maybe, wilt is maybe too strong of a word, but the leaves are maybe not quite as robust as they were when the Catasetum was in active growth. And on my largest Catasetum, you'll notice that one of the back bulbs is beginning to turn yellow, and that's perfectly normal because the plant is absorbing all of the moisture and energy from that back bulb. And that largest plant has also lost a bottom leaf, which is the normal yellowing leaf dropping thing that Catasetum orchids do in the fall. So for their care, I have definitely stopped fertilizing, and I have decreased watering to maybe once every 3 or 4 days. And I would expect by the end of October that all 3 of these plants, whether young or old or mature or not, will have lost all of their leaves, and I will be looking at bulbs that are leafless, but that's the point at which I will be watching for spikes. Now, I do not expect, the smallest of these plants to produce any blooms this year. It was kind of just pure luck that that one even grew for me. The other one, the mid-sized one, the one that you saw in the middle, it didn't exactly grow a bulb this year that I was impressed with, but the largest plant did just fine, so I'm hoping at least that one will bloom for me this year. Okay, so I'm going to take a quick little break. I am going to clear out some of these orchids in front of the camera that we're not going to talk about right away, and I'll be right back. Okay, so let's continue with talking about the orchids that are spiking or showing signs of wanting to bloom for the fall and the winter season, as well as those that are already blooming. So I'll start with the Phalaenopsis orchids. I have 8 that are in spike right now. I picked up on the 8th one the other day as I was watering, and I thought, oh, here's one more that is spiking before November, December, spiking before any kind of indication of cooler nights. So I have absolutely no explanation for why so many Phalaenopsis orchids are spiking so much sooner for me this year. But in any case, I have 8. And one of those 8 is the new orchid that I showed you not that long ago in a video, the Phalaenopsis species Pulcherrima. And you can tell right there at the top of the plant is the very first spike in my care. So I'm hoping to be able to show this one to you as a featured orchid sometime soon. Really, really excited for the spike on that species Phalaenopsis. Now, outdoors, and I didn't bring all of these orchids in, but my yellow bird has 2 spikes on it to be probably ready to bloom sometime over the winter. The Brassavola nodosa has 2 bloom spikes on it. And this orchid right here, Jackie Bright Hilo Stars, which has never bloomed for me. Now, I'll tell you a little bit more about what I have done for this orchid, and you know, it could be that what I did was a good thing, or it could just be possibly that the plant has matured enough now. But I have had this one in my collection for a number of years. I started off trying to grow it in the bay window, and I just don't think that the light in my bay window, especially into the fall and into the winter, provided enough light. So then for a growing season, I had it on the shelf outdoors, and it did seem to produce better growth when it was outdoors during the growing season on the shelf. And then this year, because I still had no blooms from it, I moved it to my brightest location on the bench outdoors where I grow a lot of my Cattleyas. And it seems like now, maybe because the plant is old enough, maybe because it received enough light during the growing season, but let me see if I can point these out on camera. They're a little bit hard to get to, but there's hopefully too many strappy leaves here. Hopefully you can see that there's an indication of a spike that would be developing there, as well as in the center of this bulb growth from this year as well. So I'm hoping that those are not false bloom sheaths, but time will tell. And if this one does bloom, it'll be a first-time bloomer, and I will be really excited to bring that one to you as a first-time bloomer. Now, let me move some of these things out of the way. Outdoors as well, I have one of my Phalaenopsis dendrobiums in full bloom. You can tell that it really enjoys growing in this clay cone planter. There's roots everywhere. The cane growth this year was twice the size of last year's, and this is the first year where it has a double spike from the top of that new cane growth. So I am really enjoying this one outdoors. It's a beautiful white bloom with the pink center. It was a featured orchid previously because it is a reliable bloomer from year to year. So that's Dendrobium chumhuyai, and really enjoying getting to see that one outdoors blooming near the Orchid Hut. And then, of course, you saw this one in a community post a few days ago. This is one of the orchids that I purchased at the Central Louisiana Orchid Show. It is Hawaii Island Mint, and both of the buds are open now. It does have a very light, almost antique rose type fragrance in the morning. Not anything that fills a room, but if you get your nose really close to it, you can tell that it's blooming. I can't take credit for this one blooming though, because I did buy it when it was already in bud. And the other Cattleya type orchid that I purchased at the show also has 2 buds on it, but it is not open yet. I'll be sure to photograph it and post a picture when it does open. But this is Potinara, so now Cattleya Chief Sweet Orange. So when this one opens, I'll be sure to share a picture of that one. Okay, so now we have two other just sort of random orchids that I wanted to show you because this is something that you may need to think about as well in your collection. All right, so I did purchase this orchid earlier in the year, and it did grow this tallest cane over the course of the summer. And you know, I thought to myself, well, it's doing its growth in this grower's pot, grower's media. You know, it really didn't seem like a great time to repot it. It had already started putting out a new root system, and I thought, well, I'll just address this next spring. Well, what's happening now is that there is a second cane growing immediately behind this one. And you know, this growth is starting now in the fall. So over the fall and winter and early spring, as this one progresses, it's already now up against the edge of the pot. You know, where is the root system going to go? And so you may also want to take a look at some of your dendrobiums and see if a repot makes sense now, even though it's the beginning of fall. And I think in my case it does, because clearly this is coming out of the pot is broken. The media doesn't look particularly bad, it's just that this one now is not set up for new growth, and it is deciding to have new growth at the beginning of the fall. So just something to kind of think about for your dendrobiums if you have any in that same situation. Now, this little orchid, Encyclia David M. Johnston, is just about the cutest little orchid I have ever seen. I have shown this one to you before. It's a very slow grower. It has never bloomed for me. I grow it in my bay window, and it's one of the few that I have in complete sphagnum moss. I just recently tucked the net pot into a clay pot with some extra sphagnum moss around the edges. And this is the new growth for this year, which is nice and tall and strong, so I'm really pleased with that. But even more so than that is the new root system that's forming there, which I think is just spectacular. I don't think the camera will pick up on it, but there are also some indications of new root growth further down inside that clay pot, and so I think this one will continue to do okay. You can tell that some of the back bulbs here are a little bit wrinkled and shriveled. The wet-dry cycle on this one is a little bit tricky. So definitely I don't think an orchid for beginners, especially if you don't have a greenhouse type environment. But it's doing okay, and I'm pleased with its progress for this year. Okay, so let's just have a quick talk now about the indoor growing area and how that's kind of coming along. And while we're talking about this, I will put this gorgeous Cattleya orchid back in front of the camera. The indoor growing space is coming along. I have brought in all of my Tolumnias now. Those were relatively safe to bring in. It was clear to see that they didn't have any bugs or ants or any sort of problem that needed to be addressed before I brought them in. So those are in. And the other thing that I would just mention, because I kind of caught myself doing something that was going to make it hard for me later. If you're going to have orchids indoors that are going to need more frequent watering or misting on a daily or maybe every 2 or 3 day schedule, then you want to make sure that you have easy access to those and that they are at the front of the shelves and not tucked away behind a bunch of other plants that you may be bringing in. I kind of caught myself because I moved my lady slipper orchids to the ledge of the windowsill, and it's fine for now because there's nothing in front of them But later on, as I bring in all of the rest of the plants, I don't want to have to reach around all of those other plants to get to the lady slippers, which need more frequent watering than some of the others. All right, so that concludes this Orchid Medley chit chat for today. If you enjoyed this video or learned something new, please give it a thumbs up. The subscribe button is coming up in the bottom right hand corner of the screen, and don't forget the notifications bell to let you know when I've posted something new. I hope everyone has a great day. Thanks so much for watching, and talk to you next time.